The information depicted in this podcast is purely for informational purposes only. Please consult your healthcare professional before making any changes to your lifestyle or routine. Hey everyone, and welcome to the Boost Your Biology podcast. My name is Lucas, and I'm the founder of Ergogenic Health. Together in this podcast series, we will go underground to explore cutting-edge health and human performance insights that you simply cannot search on Google to help you upgrade your existence. So, without any further ado, let's jump into today's episode. What's up, everyone, and welcome back to the Boost Your Biology podcast. Today on the show, joining me, we have a body transformation and competition prep expert who also specializes in hormones and gut health. Mike Skrypchyk, or Planet Mike, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you. Cheers and pleasure to have you. I'm a big lover of views, and so I vibe with you, man. That's good. It adds to the vibe. Yeah, good health and good views, man. That's what it's all about.
That's it. We've been posting some similar content. I know recently I did a post on the Lactobacillus reuteri. So maybe, Mike, do you want to let my audience know a little bit about yourself? How did you become so fascinated into health optimization?
Bodybuilding. So I always been fascinated with bodybuilding. All came in from biggest insecurity. I was very tall and I was skinny. And so I never been taken seriously. And I was foreign. So I came to the United States and went to high school. Everybody's big jock. So I was like, hey, I got to lift weights. So from there, it kind of started. I joined the military and I became a combat medic. So they taught us bits of everything. And in 2 years, serving, already running sick call. I was doing minor surgical procedures. I was ordering labs. I was working under doctor supervision. So pretty much just that patient care became like a second nature to me. So while I was bodybuilding and I was getting more advanced, I started getting more concerned about like, hey, if I cross to the dark side as a competitive athlete, like how can I, at least become aware how my biology does? And that's flipped the switch. Things that really concern me, fertility. And, overall, I didn't want to, damage myself because I knew that I maybe want to bodybuild for 10 years or so, decade or so. And then I want to, live my life happy and long. So, and the fascinated mind was always like, hey, why things the way they are? And we were on the verge of people who, when bodybuilders just start dying. So I think Dallas McCarver passed. It was like back then. So that was kind of switching the gears. And eventually I got out of the military. I went and worked for corporate healthcare as a CT X-ray tech. And on the side, I start coaching. And little by little, I'm like, man, like I can make just as much money doing what I love. And I got deeper into it. And I just knew one thing, that to be good at what we do, we have to separate ourselves. And that's where functional health kicked in. Yeah. Because we were in the pinnacle of training, diet, and bro science type of coaching. So I was like, hey, what can I provide? What type of value can I provide to my people? And not be that coach where it's, hey, follow the process, trust the process. I always wanted to tell you right away, oh, I don't have to get back to you. Like, hey, this is why, that is why, your white blood cells are shot, your immune system down, or your inflammatory response is crazy high. So CRP, CSRs, liver. So I was able to tie it all in, simplify it for my clients and make them understand, how to troubleshoot, how to assess. And when people understand it simply, they can make decisions. Because if they're not aware of what's going on with biology and they're unaware of the averages.
Absolutely.
And then we start throwing things in there that are, highly androgenic and, have high ROS RNS response and, and we're putting ourselves into the extremes of dieting, food shortages and and all that. So that was, I think that the only way to come up in the coaching industry and make it, because you provided so much more value and made people understand, like, hey, maybe it's enough. Maybe I should just, pull back. Also, it allowed us to monitor and push biology, redline it, and know exactly what happens. So where we don't guess.
Maybe with your journey, Mike, like curious to know, like at what age did you decide to like delve into some of the performance enhancing compounds, things like that? Yeah.
Age 25. So first show was, I think it was 2014. I was terrified, scared because I was still in military. It's illegal. So I had to take risks, but I was prepping for a show actually in Italy, and I was disappearing in my own eyes. I was natural. So I was able to get to the conditioning, but like I'm coming to my coach and I'm like, hey, I'm losing 3-4 pounds like this. And I'm becoming like a string being thin. I'm 6'3", so I'm very tall. And I was like, I can't keep it on because, I could diet, I could push myself. Yet when you're natural and you go through that threshold, then I was like, I can't keep it on. And that's what that last 4 weeks during show prep, it was just literally TRT dose of test propionate, and I think it was injectable Winstrol. That's all it was.
So I'd love to sort of segue with that. Some of the compounds you mentioned, I know before you mentioned like harm reduction being a prioritization and safety. You mentioned preserving fertility, things like that. When guys go down the path of like delving into experimental doses and things like that, where do you think they go wrong? Is it that they just don't understand how the compounds work, the half-life? Like, where do they go wrong?
They go wrong not understanding the compounds and how they shut you down. So let's say if you go with, testosterone-based compounds, the androgenic receptor, then if you do NOR19s like decastrambolones, then it's going to be progesterone receptor, estrogen receptor, and like androgen receptor. So you shut down 3 ways. So, and biggest, I guess, misconception is individuality, time, and dose. So, secondly, what are we doing while on cycle to support the biology? And it's like, man, biggest example I want to give. Actually, it's going to be very relevant. It was about growth hormone, and Tony and Leo went into this thing like, hey, do growth hormone every other day. But people don't understand, if we take anything exogenously in supraphysiological doses, it's going to require other things to support its work. Because as growth hormone molecule enters into bloodstream, it attaches to the fat cell receptor, releases it into a free fatty acid. Guess what we need next? L-carnitine to transport it. So now we have unheard amount of free fatty acids floating around. Guess what happens when body senses that? It becomes insulin resistant, because if you understand energy systems, it's like, I have way too much of a fat floating, like let me block tissues from. So now it works. It was correct. So with that, they're like, hey, let's take a day off. Body has enough time to synthesize L-carnitine and, utilize that. Does that make sense now?
Absolutely. Yeah. That's like looking at the downstream like implications of like, let's say, so you're facilitating this effect upstream, and then it's having this downstream effect, which you need to complement by adding in extra L-carnitine to support its effects, basically.
And same would be for testosterone and, and any other compounds. So are we supporting the increased mineral consumption? Are we supporting increased vitamin consumption? So like the whole the whole processes of, biochemical process is enhanced. So, and that's where I think industry goes wrong, where nobody really takes into account how fast we burn through, let's say, the magnesium, neurotransmitters, how fast we burn through, let's say, vitamin D, vitamin E, antioxidants, because these compounds increase reactive oxygen species. And we're like, oh, I'm taking multivitamin. It's not going to do anything. It's the amounts of zinc, but think about just proliferation and protein transcriptions and everything. The amounts of zinc, the amount of everything. So it's like they pump themselves with super physiological doses and they think more is better. My anecdote, the way I believe is, there's always a threshold where they say like, hey, that's the efficacious dose for, least side effects and most effects. But it all has to come with the availability of the supporting resources, vitamins, minerals, proteins, hydration, neurotransmitters. Where's our synapses? Does this all make sense? It's not about like, oh, let me take XYZ, let's say 2 grams cycle. What are you doing to support that? How do you support your biology? So let's say bodybuilders would use probably the most common medication in the biohacking world, metformin. What it depletes? B12. But then again, now let's talk about gut. Why? Because microbiota changes. Why people get runs from the metformin? Do you know, like sometimes they get an upset stomach?
Yeah, the diarrhea side effect from metformin. It's because the individual has disrupted gut microbiome in the first place, and that's why,
So they don't have so either the phyla or the ratio of the good bacteria is off. So body cannot keep up. So usually, I actually had a client too, and she was insulin resistant. And I was like, you know what, let's try it. And she was like, oh man, I had runs, and I was like, straight up GI map.
GI map, yeah. And what did you uncover from that?
It's been probably 6 months ago. I do at least 5 or 6 of them a day. So most common, I say, what I see on GI maps is just low beneficial bacteria. That's it. So either the ratio of phyla or commensal keystone bacteria would be like non-existent. And from there, because we don't have enough good guys, the whole balance gets thrown off.
So let's dive into the short chain fatty acids. I mean, I'm familiar with all 3 of them: butyrate, propionate, acetate. Maybe do you want to explain what you've seen? I mean, I know a lot of the research is mostly skewed and heavily focused on the butyrate portion, but they're all important. They all have a function. So maybe do you want to break that down?
First of all, short chain fatty acids byproduct of the bacteria. So the fermentation. So I think first we should jump into the different type of prebiotics and the key roles that they play.
Yeah.
So a lot of times, people would avoid certain types of foods, and that would exclude certain type of, the prebiotic fiber out of their diet. So we got galactans, we got beta glucans, we got saccharides, ligosaccharides. And so the key is, having enough prebiotic available in our daily diet to actually sustain the microbiome. So before we jump into taking probiotics and, trying to what should focus on prebiotic fiber and focus on 3 of them. And I think there's one on the market I was looking at. So it actually has search for full spectrum prebiotic, it would have GOS, so galactosaccharides, organic inulin, and the HMO, the fermented human milk oligosaccharides. So you got HMO, GOS, and FOS. So if you implement, if you're like a fitness-driven individual that's trying to maintain a good physique, maybe has caloric restrictions, or you dieting for bodybuilding, always add full spectrum prebiotic into your diet. Because the biggest mistake I think that fitness industry does that, I'm taking probiotic and I'm in like sub 1,200 calories per day or 1,000 calories per day, getting ready for a bikini show, girl, I'm taking probiotic. Well, they're all dying there. There's nothing to eat. So always, focus on daily, maybe ×2 prebiotic supplement, which is going to be, 3-way. And then for probiotics, that's where it gets very tricky, because a lot of times people think like more the better, the different strains, we can actually disturb the microbiome. So if we don't have any symptoms, and we easily can lose weight, we don't have a lot of water retention, we don't have insulin resistance, just focus maybe on sport probiotic. I think that would be the best possible suggestion for the gut. Implementing sport probiotic, also focusing on fermented foods, kimchi, sauerkrauts, kefir, lactobacillus uteri.
Yeah. So, this is critical, because I'd imagine like a lot of athletes and I guess like bodybuilders that are like on a very strict diet, or very sometimes even the same foods as well, sometimes can actually throw off the microbiome. They can develop potentially food allergies to certain foods as well. But I'd like to look at the link between how these beneficial
food allergies and so I just got back from the trip from Miami, Florida, and my godson started developing eczema. And I just found out, and I got the history, and eczema usually it always comes from gut. Skin is a detoxification organ, so with eczema usually it's candida, and I already had a couple of clients. So it's minor overgrowth of candida that usually will go asymptomatic. And we're going to create that biofilm, and that inflammatory response will be there present. So that's how we actually develop autoimmune response, because, the continuous inflammatory state where, so what body does, body responds, because we cannot do anything to get rid of that biofilm. So now the moment body senses like, sugars, or let's say what candida eats, the fungal, the yeast, right? Or, like dairy or whatever. So body's smart. So that's why we develop an allergy. So, and it was very difficult to explain to a mom, because she cares. I was like, listen, it's not about testing for allergies. You already know what your son doesn't like, what makes the eczema work, so it's not about the allergy tests. I had a client who spent $1,000 on allergy tests. Wow. I was like, I'm allergic, but you weren't. So we develop allergies, unless there was a genetic mutation. I mean, that's fine. But most of the time, it's epigenetic changes that occur, that body adapts and becomes, allergic, and response with, hyper-inflammatory response. So what, IL-8, IL-6, mast cells, and then it's just it's standard.
Also, as part of that, Mike, I guess maybe explain to my audience, I guess, like in relation to what a healthy gut function would look like in terms of so lack of bloating, passing stool that's a good quality stool every single day. Like, discuss some of the symptoms that people should experience with like good gut health?
First, just like blood work, we want to establish our individual averages. That was normal to our biology when we were not under stressful conditions. So when we weren't in caloric, deficit, when we weren't in increased physical activity. So it's very important to pay attention. How do you feel? You eat, let's say, breakfast, and do you feel like food falls through really fast? That's my key word. Pay attention how food falls through, because at times you feel like, man, like I ate an hour ago and I'm still heavy. Then are you burping? Are you bloating? And with that should be a little hints right there to understand right away what's going on. Secondly, if you can monitor your weight AM to PM, and that's a big taboo. And a lot of times I was trying to challenge a lot of coaches, listen, use education and allow people to be aware that your weight fluctuation AM and PM is directly proportionate to the inflammatory conditions in your body. So either you overexercise, you overstressed, or maybe you're like, man, I fluxed 3 pounds and I was bloated today. What did I eat? So now bloating is not going away, GI distress there. Maybe take your fasted AM glucose and look, what is your average for that? And my biggest thing was any type of gut symptomatics, we always have increased fasted AM glucose.
Yeah.
If person is not abusing caffeine, they're like, hey, and I've had clients, man, I'm so desperate. Like, I don't drink caffeine. I sleep. I turn the electronics, and they're like, what's wrong with me? So think about this. You have the biofilm in there, and sometimes we can have microorganism overgrowth, fungal, bacterial, whatever. Or we can have parasites. Parasites are huge. So we have literally another organism that eats us from inside. Body doesn't know if we get an attack from outside or inside. It's all the same. So you constantly turn on the fight or flight response, and you constantly walking around with, insulin resistance, because body is like, hey, I'm getting eaten from inside, but it doesn't know.
That's actually a really, really important point, the parasites side of things. And like many of us do have stealth pathogens within us, and we're not really familiar with them. I'd like to go back to some of the foods, though. You said
back to parasites. Actually, remember, I had a client and she had a hard time losing weight. So if you do calorie breakdown, everything, pound a week, she would maybe lose a quarter and near kill herself. She had parasite overgrowth. It wasn't worms. It was just, the microorganism, parasitic microorganism. So what it did, it was eating her intestinal lining. And that was creating big inflammatory process inside and insulin resistance. So no matter what we did, beriberi, metformin, blood sugar was 9,500, so pre-diabetic. And until that parasites were removed, that person will never be able to lose weight. So for the foods, let's talk about the foods. Yeah, so for the maintenance of microbiome, so we have to kind of figure out the two different types of fiber. So we have soluble, insoluble fiber. So soluble fiber is the one that basically can give us, the bulk to the food, and, also it will slow things down. That's why a lot of times people, they would either take fiber supplements or they will load up on one XYZ food and they get constipated, because they don't have, soluble and insoluble fiber ratio, because insoluble fiber helps us, to pass through faster through the colon, and soluble kind of accumulates the mass and swells up and helps the absorption. So let's say if we're trying to go overboard on insoluble fiber, then we won't actually have a lot of absorption taking place, because everything will be flying through super fast. Like, let's say you ate a bunch of Ezekiel bread all the time, like loaf or two a day.
Definitely.
And you didn't eat your avocados, and you didn't eat your vegetables and stuff. So that's the key. Back to mushrooms. So beta glucans are the biggest one. So for the foods, so I think just the maintaining variety of foods. So variety of vegetables, greens, variety of fruits, avocados, nuts, and mushrooms good because of the beta glucan content, and beta glucan content is directly helping our body to basically feed the bacteria that produce propionate. So byproduct, not the butyrate, by propionate. And propionate in itself, which is part of the short chain fatty acid, is responsible for increase of energy consumption. So let's say if you have low beneficial propionate producing bacteria, then you definitely, you won't be losing your, the metabolism won't be as fast.
That propionate is actually an important short chain fatty acid. I mean, do we have a lot of research on that particular short chain fatty acid, or is the majority of the research on the butyrate?
It's all on butyrate, but hold on, I actually have it pulled up here. Give me one sec.
Because I was looking into different herbs and supplements that could stimulate the growth or act on propionate production. And I think I remember cordyceps mushroom having an effect on propionate.
Yes, and because I think it has high beta glucan content.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So then that's the key. Also, propionate the insulin resistant as well.
So what's the link between propionate production and insulin sensitivity? Is there a link there?
Yes, hold on.
Yep. The diet-derived short-chain fatty acid propionate improves beta cell function in humans and stimulates insulin secretion from human islet cells. Interesting.
So that's the big one. Also for the butyrate, and that's literally all of our leaky guts. And I've noticed a lot of relief. People taking just straight up postbiotic, because there's prebiotic, probiotic, and postbiotic. So if you are in last stages of competition prep, it's always when your food is limited, and you're in major caloric restrictions. So taking actually postbiotic will be very, very beneficial. And for the whole reason is that inflammation.
When you say postbiotic, you're referring to the actual fermented byproduct of what the probiotic produces?
Yeah, there's a butyrate supplement that I actually program towards the end of the competition prep, like maybe 4 or 6 weeks out, depending on how restrictive they are. And it helps a lot. So the prebiotic, probiotic, and postbiotic are essential also, because then let's say if we have issues with estrogen dominance, if we have issues with people say, oh, I'm genetically high estrogen converter. No, you're not.
Yeah.
Because people don't understand the aromatase enzyme activity, and they don't understand the function of estrogen. And that's the biggest indicators for me when I look into, let's say, enhanced athletes, when I see, or people like, oh, I'm a high estrogen converter. Well, you're either overdoing on dosages, you're taking too many compounds that are pro-inflammatory, your ROS is through the roof. They're neurotoxic. Maybe you depleted all your neurotransmitters, because the estrogen as neuroprotective, also anti-inflammatory. So if we don't have any support from gut microbiota, we don't have, adequate amounts of, good bacterial flora, keystone commensal bacteria, in the good ratios where we can produce butyrate propionate acetate that will aid in anti-inflammatory properties. Also building muscles for butyrate. So there's a correlation with mTOR as well, and also the T cell activation. That's why, we always hear like, oh, gut health and immune system, because short chain fatty acids actually, butyrate in itself helps to activate naive T cells into that.
Yeah. Also, as part of that as well, with the estrogen side of things, better glucuronidase activity, right? Affecting estrogen recycling.
Yes. And also when we look into the autoimmune and inflammatory response, so majority of people with autoimmune disease, they always have depleted, commensal keystone bacteria, and they have messed up bacterial phyla. So they're low on good bacteria. So they always shorten themselves with anti-inflammatory properties of the gut. So what body does? Body goes, I'm going to release a lot of estrogen. So when people come to me and they always tell me like, hey, my hormones are off, let's pick hormones. And it's like, first of all, find the cause of increased inflammation. What is causing you? So, and you can kind of go by the elimination process, lifestyle, well, the biggest one. And then, where's your digestion? So I think like lifestyle and digestion, where with lifestyle here and sleep. And then, which is a vicious circle, because if our hormones are off, we cannot be very mentally strong. So at times, I say it's even necessary to replace hormones first. And again, this is just, that's my anecdote. That's how I would usually approach it. I would replace, let's say if you're in, over 25 years of age, when you're already formed, established, adult, and you're going through these issues where you're experiencing autoimmune conditions, or, some extremely messed up with the gut. You ever try to heal gut for like 3-4 months without replacing hormones? It's ridiculous, but it's like person, I don't think they will be even capable to, follow the plan, because you can't focus. You have brain fog. You have you can't do anything.
Yeah.
So
from the compliance side of things, like how can the individual commit to something or be motivated to make change without the hormones? They can't.
So with this, so usually, that's why where TRT clinics, can be beneficial. And again, if you do replacement, you're not going to shut yourself down so much, So my biggest thing always, replace hormones first, make them feel semi-sustainable here, where they can withstand the stress, where they can, kind of have, the hormonal state that will upregulating, and, it will be sustaining to the mental state.
We should clarify that with you said to go on replacement, you're not going to shut yourself down. You mean like they will be shut down on testosterone therapy?
Yes, but again, the dose and time.
Yeah, exactly.
And for me, I say, what usually the gut healing would take 3-4 months. So you can, get under the supervised, replacement therapy, woman or man, while you're on, the healing journey. Because at times, if you're a female and you're highly estrogenic, your gut stuff, if you get on, let's say, replacement therapy, it will reset your axis. So you actually will shut down your standard response, and, you will lower your estrogen dominance just with the TRT. So that's an option to consider. I'm not saying that like, hey, that's what you need to do, but then again, it will be a good option to get to the balanced state of the hormones to accommodate the healing of the gut.
Absolutely. It's critical with, I'd like to sort of switch gears, Mike, and sort of discuss like, so, you mentioned gut health being integral to like the overall healing journey and supporting overall health. Yeah. What are some other harm reduction approaches that you take, like using TUDCA, taurine, things like that to support liver, things like that?
First, harm reduction always starts with diagnostics. So first, the key, look into the complete blood counts.
Yeah.
I always, and so we know like, hey, when we were, let's say on TRT, our ratios, and that is very important, you know, if coaches are watching this, always pay attention to your client white blood cell ratios, because your eosinophils, your basophils, you know, your lymphocytes, your white blood cells are speaking volumes on, you know, inflammatory response, also of how does body handles XYZ compound. Because I've had a client who was on TRT and testosterone cypionate was converting him at 200 milligrams dosage. He was up to 126 on estradiol.
Just on fat? Just on 200 milligrams. Wow.
Yes. High body fat, high stress, works a lot, businessman. So
did he have mercury toxicity as well? Because I think mercury, like heavy metals, can even increase.
It's not. It's lack of sleep. I call it entrepreneur lifestyle. And then again, your body fat's too high, so your aromatase and enzyme is going to be high.
Yeah, this is something we see in even in athletes, right? Like those
Olympics were the first ones, and everybody were like, "Oh, their immune system is like superior adapted." No, they're just they're constantly overworking and they're constantly undereating, because we need energy to sustain our body. So a lot of times people like carbs. People undereat carbohydrates, and carbohydrates are essential for proper function of our white blood cells.
Well, let's go into the carbohydrates. I'm curious to know, like, what are your predominant carbohydrate favorites, like your favorite sources?
White bread.
Yeah. White rice.
I would say rice. I would say always going to be like white rice. Then secondly would be the oatmeals, and thirdly, I mean pastas. Like I have no issues with gluten. I have no issues with inflammation. So bread, I'd say sourdough bread would probably be the best white bread to have. Actually, will be beneficial for propionate producing bacteria as well.
Yeah, I also have a lot of sourdough bread as well. I'm a big, not only from the taste perspective, I really enjoy sourdough bread with some good quality organic butter with some eggs. Like fantastic meal, you know.
Oh, absolutely.
And what about fruit?
So fruits are essential, and again for prebiotics. So blueberries, then pineapple for the what is that? The
bromelain
content.
Yeah. And
then also the fructose and the prebiotic fibers. So we have to eat fruit. When people say like don't eat, like I just it's like you cutting yourself short off. And again, for competition prep, like it's fine, but always get yourself a full spectrum prebiotic. Stop focusing on probiotics, focus on prebiotics, and look into that breakdown. So you got your inulins, you got your galacosaccharides, so try to get the full spectrum, very, diverse prebiotic supplement. And I think that would be the number one recommendation and preventive cause for anyone, either you're natural or you're enhanced, because that will sustain production of, good bacteria, and it's going to guarantee that you have plenty of short chain fatty acids. So now going back into the labs, so white blood cells will speak volumes. So as the person who, wants to know, or you coach, like, always be responsive to the ratios of your hematology, because your blood will speak volumes. So also always pay attention to the hemoglobin levels, the iron, ferritin, because another big deal, and you research on Rotary, when it needs iron to survive.
Wow.
So in order for good bacteriophila to strive, we need iron. So at times, that's when big bacterial overgrowth, we have major disturbances and dysbiosis. At times, that could be the cause why we're not having enough iron. Because a lot of that bacteria will be consuming it.
That's super interesting.
And here's a cool one for your post. So what I usually do for females that have low iron, there's a strain. I actually have it pulled up on my supplement list. There's a strain of probiotic. It's available in Australia. I try to buy it
really
here, and I actually, you guys are, when it comes to naturopathic health, like, a lot of great products come from Australia.
Is it a probiotic strain that enhances iron uptake and absorption?
You know what I'm talking about, right?
299V.
Yep, that's it. This is it. So that's the key. And of course, reduce caffeine intake, because caffeine will deplete iron at astronomical speeds, and, maybe titrate that strain of probiotic, and you will see a big difference in the iron. Also, there's a lot of false diagnosis of hematochromatosis that is non-genetic, because there could be actually the bacterial overgrowth of the bacteria that can enhance the uptake of iron into bloodstream. So, like, it's crazy how gut will play such a crazy key role, and we, as the humanity, just always trying to put the band-aid on the symptom. But we have like the whole, like, symbiotic organisms, like thousands of them that working with us to sustain us, and it's insane, man. I just at times I feel like there's more to the bacteria that we carry than we think. Because if you think in terms of nanotechnology, and we already know that's like future, whatever, nano, where we can have little micro robots, we can accumulate, assemble with AI technology, let's say, and work to the greater good and adjust to the environment. I think that's what microbiome does. So it's almost like creator basically made it like this. Hey, if you don't have the resources, there's other guys inside that's going to facilitate and help you, to rebuild and absorb. But I mean, think about this, the B vitamins. So when we're talking about the butyrate producing, like you can synthesize B vitamins through the bacteriophila, through the good beneficial bacteria. You know that the vitamin K. So we can't. It's like if we don't have good gut health, we are doomed, and we can't sustain ourselves for a very long periods of time. So the fermentation process is so important. Also the digestion. Because a lot of times, the protein breakdown. So we need bacteria for that as well. So For me, prebiotic fibers, and then I think, spores and 4 weeks little bursts of I say stay away from multi-strain probiotic supplements unless you have confirmation via diagnostics, GI map. But then just add a strain and see how you feel, because if you overdo it, you can always pull back and your body will restore it. But if you start putting 100 billion CFUs of 16 different strains, you will never be able to find out what caused the break.
It's a really, really critical point. I definitely agree with that. And with the prebiotic approach, you're really adamant. You really encourage people to deploy that in their protocol. Is like a good
100%, because which person in their right mind will overeat avocados? Which person in their right mind will overeat fruits? Which how who? Maybe
1%, 0.1%.
Well, yeah, because we all want to be shredded. We want to look good. We want to, so it's it's not going to be enough. So I say, at least add any type of, fermented foods twice a day. Morning, I usually, just add a little bit of sauerkraut in the morning, maybe kimchi in the evening, and then, before you go to bed, that's what I usually do. Before I go to bed, 2 servings of prebiotic, and that's it, because I know it's going to sit there and it's going to, I'm not going to be, I'm not going to have fast peristalsis. Everything's going to be slowed down. So that prebiotic supplement will sit there for longer and feed the good guys. So another big one is, on probiotics, when you take them, I usually would take them first thing in the morning on empty, and then meal 2 after the intake of probiotic, I probably add prebiotic fiber as well.
This is really, really, really important stuff.
So for bodybuilders, for bodybuilders, so the biggest supplements that I will advise, well, first, ubiquinol. So ubiquinol, and that is probably because we hear so much about heart. So when we turn 25, we are unable to effectively convert CoQ10 into the bioactive form, which is ubiquinol. So ubiquinol is essential, and ubiquinol has been studied a lot, and it also restored heart ejection fraction majorly at 200 to 400 milligrams per day. So because it's major antioxidant, also it helps mitochondria to produce energy. So when we constantly bigger, we're a bodybuilder, we have higher intake of oxygen because our tissue consuming so much oxygen. We want to make sure that we have a lot of sustainment for our heart. So ubiquinol, then L-carnitine injectable. That is probably the most essential and the most recommended supplement, and people are hating it because they got to pin it. So because the anti-inflammatory properties, the androgenic receptor stimulating properties, IGF-1 properties, fertility.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So ubiquinol, L-carnitine injectable. Now I want to address another big one that nobody will hear, BPC 157 peptide. So anyone who is on the dark enhanced side, even on CRT, BPC 157, because first of all, the anti-inflammatory properties of BPC 157, also the neurotoxicity, it removes the neurotoxicity. Also, it plays the key role in upregulating IGF-1 receptor, just like an L-carnitine. So if people are supplementing and, they use exogenous growth hormone, either it's a replacement or it's, for the bodybuilding reasons, get the best out of your buck that you spend on GH. So L-carnitine, because it's going to help you upregulate the IGF-1 receptor proliferation. Same with BPC 157. Also, the neurogenesis. Yeah. And the key for BPC 157 supplementation for any bodybuilder is upregulation of dopaminergic and serotonergic circuits in your system. So because we get depleted, especially with NOR19 compounds, DECAs or trans, you deplete the hell out of your dopamine. And the reason why you deplete dopamine, because you have way too much reactive nitrogen species, so RNS and ROS, so a lot of neurotoxicity. And let's say NOR19s are very neurotoxic. So at first, it will enhance the cortisol release. Cortisol heightened for a prolonged period of time will decrease dopamine. Also, you being in neurotoxic state will drop the dopamine. And guess what happens next? I need cabergoline. Because when dopamine plummets, your prolactin shoots up. And a lot of times, it's not even the case, because a lot of bros don't do labs, because the biggest driver of prolactin in men, enhanced man, would be the high estrogen levels. And the way the estrogenic receptor activated. So, now, when we speaking of BPC 157, neurogenesis and everything, we have to also take in consideration that we need a lot more of vitamin B6. So P5P active version for any enhanced athlete, vitamin B6, I'd say liposome will probably be the best thing. And I want to say, do not inject B6.
Yeah, very dangerous.
Yes, and if you overdose, you can create neuropathy and actually, fry your nerves. So it can be very neurotoxic. So, but supplements would be the best thing. Also, P5P, B6 will be also very essential in controlling the estrogen conversions, and it will be essential in controlling the
cofactor to convert.
Yeah. So now for estrogen elimination and stuff. So and detoxification. So TUDCAs are great, but now we have to look into the liver and the bile. So another great supplement that nobody talked about, and I'm going to share, it's called Chanca Piedra. So if you're a bodybuilder and you use superphysiological doses and you start losing appetite, TUDCAs usually for sure will help. Your standard betaine, HCl, pepsins. And if you're not regaining appetite, you have to increase the bile flow throughout. So Chanca Piedra will be your friend. I'd say at 800 milligrams twice a day, you're gonna feel like you want to eat again. And I would advise this to enhanced guys in off season. That would be a great help. And it usually happens to those guys, man, I can't eat. So if you're that bodybuilder and you have, and that's where the gut health come in play, where it's like, so the bile production, I can't eat, or I can't eat that much food. So you either have low stomach acid or you don't have enough bile. So, and that's where Chanca Piedra comes in play. Also, it feeds beneficial bacteria, and also it has a slight antioxidant effect that helps liver. So then we going into NAC. NAC is great, but if you can afford injectable glutathione, I would always recommend it. And also at the end of your prep, when you're really beating yourself down, NAD plus. Yeah, that would be NAD plus. That would be probably the most beneficial for any bodybuilder who is in caloric deficits and in a crazy beat down, because you literally restarting your whole cells of your mitochondria. Because can you imagine you're like 16, 20 weeks into like hell and your cells like everything's just down, like near the metabolic syndrome, near whatever. And you just, if you can do slow drip IV of NAD plus, let's say it's going to be expensive, like $500 for 1,000, micrograms over 6 hours. And, but it's like you almost restarting your whole metabolic system again. And what's cool about NAD plus and BPC, that's it will also restore your synapses and, dopamine. It will decrease the neurotoxicity. And also it will restore the dopamine and serotonin. So with this, NAC, let's brainstorm. So ubiquinol we can take Chancapiedra, we can take, what do we talk about? BPC 157. Pills are fine because it's natural, our body produces it, so we can absorb it just fine. So also another good one, I'd say RLA. It's great, another great antioxidant. RALA, not ALA, because it has better absorption. So my biggest thing, just push heavy on antioxidants and anti-inflammation. So for elimination and liver function, is anything that will stimulate the biliary tree, and for TUDCAs, for protein uncoupling. So, first thing in the morning, I'd say 1,000 milligrams of TUDCA. If you're running a heavy PED cycle, that will be very beneficial. And also before you go to bed at night, another 500, 2,000, that'll be good. For estrogen now, we got to understand. So when we are enhanced and we eliminating a lot of bad estrogens out of our system. And a lot of times, we got to take steps. So, like your even standard DIMS will be necessary. Because the biggest misconception I hear is like, oh, why do I need DIM? Because I use AI, anti-estrogen. But there's such a high conversion and the high elimination rate that goes into the whole equation. So I'd say for people that are high estrogen converters, always have issues, control inflammation, but maybe look into if you have burdened liver, so stack in NAC with SAM-E. And I'm talking about SAM-E 400 to 800 milligrams for people that, you're running highly aromatizing compounds at the higher rate, especially when you're not using AIs and you actually try to control your estrogen activity by, increasing the ratio of dihydrotestosterone DHT. You still have this estrogen floating. And so there's good estrogen and bad estrogen. So you got to make sure that you eliminate the ratios of bad. And in order to do so, we have to take steps. So DIM will be very beneficial and SAM-E will be very beneficial. So if you're running highly aromatizing compounds or the biggest advice too, we cannot grow without estrogen effectively because, of IGF receptor activation and estrogen activation. So, if you don't have symptoms, you can ride yourself, I'd say, 80, 100 estradiol, you will grow, you'll be full, but take steps to make sure that you're still able to eliminate and not burden yourself with so much. So
yes.
Now, another big one, supplement wise, colloidal minerals. So, and fumic and fulvic acid. So we got to detoxify our body. So, and that's where the colloidal minerals, spore probiotics come in play. And also the good mineral complex as well. SEMI is great because it's good for methylation as well. So a lot of times when we use, I guess, super physiological levels of PEETs, the methylation process gets altered as well. So, and then we just start the big snowball effect. So, but that all comes into the, you know, controlling the burden of the liver. So looking into the, you know, ALTs and ASTs. So, and then that's what I say for maintenance, you know, in the middle of your cycle, if you're enhanced, do blood work, see where your bilirubin at, see where your LSTs, ASTs, do direct bilirubin in this, check GGT. So, you know, the liver functions. And from there, always monitor where's your blood glucose at. So at times when we overdo on supraphysiological levels of PEETs, first what happens is we start experiencing high flux of weight AM, PM, and we have very high increase, you know, I'd say 10, 15 points jump in insulin resistance. So, and from there, it's all about inflammation and controlling the inflammation. So at times, I cannot stress this enough. It's okay to pull back. So even when I coach my athletes sometimes, and let's say if labs come back high, you know, pull back for a week or two. You ain't gonna lose anything. You're actually gonna improve in your looks, and I've noticed a lot. And when we, you know, introduce the XYZ, you know, compounds and dosages, titrate down, because the amount that, you know, the dose, the amount for your biology, for whatever body was going through, it was too much. But if you keep riding and you're not going to pull back, you're just going to keep looking worse and worse. Your metabolism is going to slow down, your water retention is going to go up, and so on. So at times it's good to give body a little break and you know, control over inflammation, because the key is mast cell activation. So when we have too much ROS, like that's the key with our ability to withstand pressure for, you know, supraphysiological levels of PEETs. If we can control inflammation that is induced by PEETs, you know, that's why I say, you know, if you can shoot glutathione 400 milligrams twice a week, while, you know, you're going hard in the pain with, you know, the doses and compounds, that will allow you to, you know, sustain, you know, a much better state of your biology where you're not constantly inflamed, because then you ride yourself into 16-week prep towards the end, and there's no diuretic on earth will be able to help you. So for that, I say for supplements, I think it really needs to be taken into account your averages before you started the prep and you started, you know, blasting super physiological high doses. Then you have to take into account, you know, the pharmacology, pharmacokinetics, also your current body's body biofeedback, what's happening to your blood pressure, what's happening to your blood sugar. And from there, in the middle of the prep, do the blood work and assess your biology, so you know, because at times, you know, we can take the list of supplements, but it might not be that necessary.
Some really, really critical points there, Mike. I mean, there's so much that we've uncovered and unpacked there. There's some absolute golden nuggets. Thank you so much for sharing all those. Mike, I want to give my audience a chance. If they want to connect with you, where can they find you and where can they get in touch?
It's very simple to find me at Instagram, planetmike_, and that's it. Awesome, man. Well, yeah, it was a pleasure having you on and some great discussions. We'll probably have to get you back on for a second podcast at some stage, because there's a lot more we can dive into. But
Yeah, thanks for coming on the show, Mike.
Yeah, thanks, Lucas. I dig the new haircut, man.
Thank you, man.
Yeah, you look super Chad now. That's it. Take care, man.
Thank you, man. Thank you, everyone, for joining in to today's episode. For in-depth show notes and lessons learned, visit nofilter.media/boost your biology.
This has been a No Filter Media production.
Say what you want.